Hey friend, Chris Vandeviver here from WhyLogicProRules.com, the website that helps you get the most you can out of Apple's Logic Pro. The next couple of posts, I wanted to help some of us who are just getting into Logic with identifying the best gear to pick up, budget-friendly gear that you can pick up so you can get right down to creating in Logic. About this time last year, I had a set of videos where I identified what I believe was the best interface for Logic Pro users. And this was really a number of details that went into this. Number one, audio quality. Number two, cost to a certain extent. Number three, integration with Logic Pro. And I identified what I thought was the best interface was the Apogee Element 24. And I love the Apogee stuff. Prior to that video, I had had no experience with Apogee. And after that video, I've fallen in love with their stuff. And I have the Element 24. I have their Ensemble, which is a beast and also very pricey. And since that video, I've had a number of readers reach out because Apogee has discontinued the Element 24 and 46, which were the cheapest options of the Element line. And so many readers have been reaching out and like, Chris, what can I get in place of that interface? What's your recommendation? And I've held out on that question because I didn't have a recommendation. I, enjoyed the Element stuff and that was that. But I know this is a need for many a Logic user, and Apogee, while I think they're a fantastic company and I'm very excited for what they have coming up, their stuff is not necessarily the cheapest. It depends on what you're looking for. They have USB microphones, they have guitar interfaces. That might be more budget friendly, but for an audio interface, now it's like the Element 88, which is a pricey interface, the Ensemble, the Symphony Series, and the Symphony Desktop, which I haven't tried out yet, but I intend to, and I'm hoping to do a review for the channel. So where does that leave us? For those of us who are budget users, who are beginners, and just don't want to mess around with really expensive equipment? Well, I've identified what I believe are two interfaces. Now, I purchase these things on my own dime and try them out, so I do a lot of research leading up to deciding what interfaces to try. I'm not going to try all of the interfaces on the market. I did a ton of research, identified two that I thought would be great, and I think they live up to the expectation, which is budget-friendly, very easy to get into, and just sound great. So let's dig into this. Now, these recommendations are really geared towards those of us who are new to Logic Pro and who might identify as beginners, who are not necessarily comfortable with getting in the weeds of audio equipment. You just want to plug it in and just get going. That's been the focus. And obviously, great functionality, great quality, etc. Of course, you've probably done some research on your own. And if you're really looking for plug and play, you could research USB microphones. I have not had the opportunity to try any, but USB microphones are, there's so many options now. There's some great options from Rode, from Apogee themselves, from Presonus, etc. There's lots of options to choose from. If you do a quick search on any, online retailer of audio equipment, you're going to probably see a lot of quality stuff that is easy to get going with. And from my little research that I did between the Apogee Hype Mic to some of the Rode stuff, it's literally labeled plug and play. You plug it in, you set the input and output in Logic to that microphone, and you get going. This is going to be for folks who are looking for a little more versatility in an audio interface. Not just a microphone, but maybe you want to plug in a guitar or some MIDI instruments, some external MIDI instruments, or, just options so you can try different things out and you're not stuck with just this one microphone or just this one guitar interface. So first on my list, it's a classic, so probably a lot of people are not going to be too surprised, but I ended up checking out the Focusrite series of Scarlett interfaces. And, let me just hold it up for you so you can get a quick look. This is the Solo. So this is the most basic interface that you can get your hands on. As you can see, there's a single XLR input. There's a single instrument input. There's a single knob for the output. So for managing, your monitors or your headphones, there's one knob to manage both the headphones and the stereo output to speakers. And, as you go up in the line, it's the generation 3 or the third generation of Focusrite Scarlett interfaces. This right here is like $100. It's so cheap and you can get right down to it. It's the easiest interface experience that I've experienced next to what I'm going to show you next. But you plug it in and then an app pops up on your desktop, on your Mac, and it leads you right down the path of getting set up, registered with your device, download any necessary drivers or software so you can use your interface. And for the Solo, you don't get as much interaction with the interface from the software. It's really all in the interface It's awesome. It sounds great. It's easy to get started with, and you can plug it in both to your Mac or an iOS device. It's compatible with iPads and iPhones and such. Additionally, it is compatible with Big Sur, and it's compatible with the new M1 Max, as far as I understand from reading the materials on Focusrite's website. Though you don't get access to the Focusrite Control app on M1 Max quite yet. And what I love about the newest generation of these types of interfaces is the direct monitoring. It's no longer like a control app. I mean, you just press a button. You just say, okay, either I want to use the software mixer in Logic, or I want to use the direct monitoring through the interface itself. I don't have to go into a separate mixer and say, yes, I want to use direct monitoring. It's so simple. What else is really cool about this particular interface in the line is that it's bus powered. So you don't even have to have a separate power supply. It has phantom power that it runs right through, from your Mac. And additionally, you get this air kind of EQ control where you can add a little lift of presence and upper mids, which is really cool. So if you're working with a microphone that's maybe a little dark or a source that's a little dark, you can just enable this to get a little more life and presence out of it. And then you have a separate 1/4 inch input that you can set to either just regular 1/4 inch or an instrument input, so you can plug your guitar and get going. Again, it's really bare bones. You have to look at the different options of the Scarlett series to really hone in on what you may be looking for. Maybe you're looking for some MIDI inputs. Maybe you're looking for more than 1 or 2 inputs. So it's so cost effective, so easy to get started. I really can't recommend it enough. It's so much fun, and I'm very glad to have it in, my toolkit if I'm, going home or traveling or whatever. Not during these times, but you know what I mean. Which brings us to our second interface that I think is even like a touch better than the Scarlett. And I think the Scarlett's great, but the MOTU M Series of interfaces here, which I'll hold it up so you can see it, it's slightly, just a hair more expensive. It's probably right on par actually with something above the Solo of the Focusrite series, whatever the next one is, the 2i2, or it's probably right on point. But the M Series, I was very surprised by. My first real interface was a MOTU 8 Pre, a Firewire one, and it was great. But this was at a time when, you had to have a separate mixer to set up direct monitoring, and the latency was, kind of rough. At that time, it's probably amazing, but, looking backwards now. But the M Series is pretty sick. I of course, picked the cheaper of the two. There's an M2 and an M4. Let's take a look. There's 2 inputs on this, and they're combi jack, so you can plug in, an XLR or just a 1/4 inch. It has phantom power for each input, so you can specify on a per input basis and obviously gain for each one. And then you have not only a knob for the speaker output, but also a knob for the headphone output. So unlike the Focusrite interface, you had one knob for the Solo to control both headphones and stereo speakers, which, I think they could have sprung for one more knob personally. With the M Series M2, you get one for each output. Additionally, on the back, you get a pair of monitor outputs for your speakers and MIDI in and out, which MOTU has always been really cool and on top of MIDI functionality. So I think that's really awesome for this particular interface. And there's even a power button on it as well. So you can actually turn the thing off when you're not using it. The display is out of control for seeing levels of your stereo output, for seeing the levels of your different inputs. Additionally, the chip for the converters is identical to what comes in some of the Apogee interfaces. But I was so impressed by this. So we're talking basic functionality. You can just plug this in. You don't even need an app. Like the Scarlett series, loads up an app on your desktop and you double click it and you go down your path with it. But with the M Series, you just plug it in and you're done. There's no app to download. There is an optional driver for the M Series, and you can download that, which will reduce the latency of these units. I was very, very impressed by. And you can also have a loop back functionality if you download that optional driver. So if you want to record something from YouTube or play along or route some audio somewhere on your Mac into Logic, you can do it. You just want to make sure to mute the loop back channel strip that you set up because you could create a feedback loop. But back to the latency. So these two devices out of the box, When compared to my Apogee Thunderbolt interfaces, the Apogee stuff won handily because they are both Thunderbolt. I was blown away that the MOTU M Series, when you download that optional driver, the latency is dramatically reduced to a point that it is less latency than a Thunderbolt interface, the two that I have, and I love them. Another detail related to the MOTU M Series interfaces, they are both macOS and iOS compatible, so you can also use it with your iPad or your iPhone. However, at this moment in time, based on my research, the M Series is not compatible with M1 Silicon Macs, so you will be waiting, whereas the Scarlett series, you can get right down to it. Maybe you don't have the control app available to you, but you can actually use the Scarlett series with an M1 Mac. The MOTU series, we're waiting on compatibility. The other thing that I failed to mention with the M Series MOTU interfaces here is that there's a direct monitoring button just like the Focusrite series. So I don't know if you can see, but if I click the button right here, on a per channel basis, there's a blue monitor button that you can turn on and off. So if you want to use software monitoring in Logic, you can use that. Or if the latency is too much to deal with, usually with vocals, you can just click that button, turn off software monitoring in Logic, and you have zero latency. It's such an amazing advancement for using interfaces that might suffer from latency. I love this advancement and this type of technology. It's awesome. And then on top of that, each of these interfaces come with software. Now, unfortunately, on the MOTU front, it's basically all geared towards digital performer. And that's like MOTU's own DAW or DAW, as opposed to Logic. Whereas the Scarlett series, you get all sorts of downloads from plugins to instruments, and it's part of a plugin collective. So every month they're introducing a new deal or a new free plugin that you can download for free just for being a Focusrite customer. So, there's a give and take in each department. If you're looking for a budget interface to get right down to it with a little fuss, little having to get into the weeds, I highly recommend both the Scarlett series from Focusrite and the M series from MOTU. They're great. And the next time that I see you, we're going to be talking about the best budget USB controllers for Logic users based on what I've researched and what I've tried out. So I do hope this was helpful for you. If it was, as always, I highly recommend subscribing to the YouTube channel, Why Logic Pro Rules, or subscribing on the website itself, whylogicprorules.com. Every week I'm posting new videos, new emails, and posts to help you get the most you can out of Apple's Logic Pro. Thanks so much.